Ladies and gentlemen, when I first realized I'd have to retire on just $1,000 a month, I felt fear grip me like never before. How would I live? Would I have to give up everything I loved? Would I lose my dignity, my independence, my peace? But here's the truth. What started as a terrifying challenge turned into one of the most profound and transformative experiences of my life. Because sometimes, it's not wealth that brings clarity, it's limitations. It's not abundance that makes you strong, it's the struggle. I want to share with you 5 powerful lessons I learned from retiring on just $1,000 a month. Not as someone who gave up, but as someone who rose up. Before we begin, if you have not subscribed to my channel yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any video. Number 1. Simplicity isn't poverty, it's freedom. When I first realized I would be living on just $1,000 a month in retirement, the immediate thought that hit me was loss. I imagined all the things I wouldn't be able to do: travel, dine out frequently, buy new clothes on a whim, or upgrade my phone whenever I wanted. I associated simplicity with sacrifice, with poverty, with lack. But over time, I discovered something that completely shifted my perspective. Simplicity isn't poverty, it's freedom. And once I understood that, my life began to transform in the most unexpected ways. Living simply forced me to examine what truly added value to my life. I no longer had the luxury of spending without thought, which made me ask myself deeper questions. Do I really need this? Does this bring me peace, joy, or purpose? For the first time in decades, I wasn't operating on autopilot. Every purchase was intentional. Every choice carried weight. But that wasn't a burden, it was a gift. Because through that awareness, I began to strip away the unnecessary and make room for what mattered most. With fewer possessions came less clutter. My living space became easier to manage, more peaceful, more comfortable. I no longer felt weighed down by piles of things I barely used. Letting go of material excess gave me breathing room, not just in my home, but in my mind. I didn't realize how much anxiety came from trying to maintain, organize, protect, and replace all the stuff I once thought I needed. Simplicity brought clarity. I stopped chasing trends, status, and other people's standards of success. I began defining happiness for myself. What surprised me most was how much I began to enjoy the slower pace of life. When you're not constantly busy keeping up with bills, buying more, or maintaining a complex lifestyle, time opens up. I started taking longer walks, noticing nature again. I found joy in things that cost nothing. The scent of morning coffee, the comfort of a familiar book, or the calm of a clean, quiet room. I wasn't running from one distraction to another. I was present. Simplicity gave me back my time and attention. I also noticed that my relationships improved. When you're not consumed by earning and spending, you start investing more in people. I had time for real conversations, time to listen and be listened to. I started inviting friends over for tea instead of meeting at restaurants, and those moments felt more sincere. It wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about connecting. Simplicity stripped away the performance of life and replaced it with authenticity. There's a powerful confidence that grows when you realize you can live well with less. That you're not dependent on luxury to feel whole. That your joy isn't dictated by a bank statement. I began to see myself not as someone who lacked, but as someone who had enough. And that mindset changed everything. I wasn't poor, I was free. Free from debt, from pressure, from comparison. Free to focus on what made my soul feel alive. Living simply on $1,000 a month didn't shrink my life. It expanded it. It deepened my gratitude, strengthened my character, and opened my heart. It made me more resourceful, more grounded, and more content than I had ever been with 5 times that amount. Simplicity wasn't a fallback plan. It became my liberation. In a world that constantly screams for more, I found peace in less. And in that peace, I found freedom. The kind of freedom that no amount of money can ever buy. Number 2, gratitude multiplies what you have. When I began living on $1,000 a month in retirement, I expected to feel frustrated, limited, maybe even ashamed. I thought the lack of financial freedom would make every day feel like a struggle. But something surprising happened. Instead of feeling deprived, I started to feel deeply grateful. And that gratitude changed everything. It didn't add more money to my account, but it multiplied the richness of my experience. It didn't change the numbers, but it completely transformed how I lived with them. At first, gratitude came in small moments. I'd sit with a hot cup of tea in the morning, sunlight streaming through the window, and realized just how peaceful that moment was. I'd take a walk and be thankful that I was healthy enough to do so. I'd cook a simple meal and be amazed by how nourishing it felt, how satisfying it was not just to eat, but to prepare something with care. Gratitude began sneaking into the corners of my days, gently reminding me of all the things that were still good. The more I practiced it, the more I noticed. I became grateful for my home, not because it was big or modern, but because it was mine and it was safe. I felt thankful for quiet evenings, for conversations with loved ones, for every kind gesture, every memory, every moment of calm. I stopped looking at what I couldn't afford and started focusing on everything I already had, and suddenly, it felt like I had more than enough. Gratitude isn't denial. It doesn't ignore hardship or pretend things are perfect. But it shifts your attention from scarcity to abundance. It reminds you that even when life is hard, there is always something worth appreciating. And when you start recognizing those things, you feel richer inside. You stop chasing external validation. You stop comparing your journey with others. You realize that joy isn't about having it all. It's about noticing what's already here. Living on a tight budget could have made me bitter. But gratitude softened that. It helped me stop resenting what I lacked and start celebrating what I had. I began to see how fortunate I was to have shelter, food, and time. Many people have more money and less peace. I learned to value a slower life, a simpler rhythm. I didn't need more. I just needed to see more clearly. Gratitude also deepened my relationships. When you're thankful for people, you treat them differently. I became more expressive, more patient, more generous with my time and attention. I started writing letters, making phone calls, showing up. And the more I gave, the more I received, not in things, but in love, in presence, in connection. Gratitude multiplied my capacity to care and be cared for. What I learned is that gratitude isn't something you do once. It's a way of seeing. It's a lens you choose every single day. And when you live through that lens, your world expands. You feel joy more easily. You bounce back from difficulties more quickly. You feel anchored, not by possessions, but by perspective. I may not have retired with a fortune, but gratitude helped me see that I was already wealthy in the ways that matter most. I had time, relationships, memories, and moments. I had breath in my lungs and purpose in my heart. And every time I remembered that, it felt like the world opened up just a little more. Gratitude didn't just make life bearable. It made it beautiful. It taught me that no matter how little you think you have, when you begin to count your blessings, you discover that you're surrounded by riches you never noticed before. And that's how gratitude truly multiplies what you have. Not in your wallet, but in your soul. Number 3, creativity replaces convenience. When I retired and began living on just $1,000, one of the first things I had to give up was convenience. No more takeout meals on lazy evenings. No quick trips to the store to grab something without checking prices. No hiring help for small fixes around the house. At first, this shift felt like a loss. I was used to solving problems with money. If something broke, I'd pay someone to fix it. If I was tired, I'd order food. If I needed something, I'd buy it. Convenience had become my default way of living. But when that option disappeared, something unexpected began to take its place in creativity. With less money, I had to think differently. I couldn't afford to outsource my problems or seek instant solutions. Instead, I began to use my mind more, my hands more, and my imagination more. I started looking around my home and seeing possibilities instead of limitations. That old chair didn't need to be replaced. It needed a coat of paint and a cushion. Dinner didn't have to be something I bought. It could be something I made from what was already in my pantry. A problem didn't require a purchase. It invited a solution. As my circumstances demanded more creativity, I began to realize how satisfying it was to solve things on my own. There was a pride in figuring things out, in doing it myself, in making something from almost nothing. I felt capable again. Every time I fixed, repurposed, cooked, cleaned, repaired, or reimagined something, it reminded me that I was still useful, still sharp, still able to adapt. It wasn't just about saving money. It was about reclaiming a part of myself I hadn't used in years. The creativity also made life more interesting. When convenience was no longer an option, I started experimenting, trying new recipes, growing herbs on the windowsill, rearranging furniture to freshen up the space. I learned to sew small tears in my clothes, to mix homemade cleaning products, to turn leftovers into entirely new meals. These might seem like small things, but they gave me a sense of control, purpose, and even joy. Each creative act was a reminder that limitations don't have to lead to frustration. They can lead to innovation. It also helped me build stronger connections with others. I began swapping ideas and skills with friends and neighbors. One person knew how to mend clothes, another could fix a leaky faucet. Someone else had great tips on growing vegetables. We exchanged knowledge, time, and support instead of money. Creativity became a communal resource, something that brought us together and strengthened our bonds. We weren't just surviving. We were growing through shared resourcefulness. Most importantly, creativity shifted how I saw myself. I stopped viewing myself as someone limited by a tight budget and started seeing myself as someone who could rise to meet challenges. The lack of convenience became an opportunity to build resilience. I no longer felt like I was constantly losing things. I felt like I was gaining new skills, new perspectives, and new strength. Living on a $1,000 a month didn't just force me to be more creative. It gave me a reason to be. And in that process, I discovered a version of myself that I hadn't known in a long time. A version that was imaginative, adaptable, and proud of what they could do with what they had. Creativity didn't just replace convenience. It gave me back a deeper, more meaningful way of living. It reminded me that even when money is tight, the mind is limitless, and that's a kind of wealth that can never be taken away. Number 4, relationships matter more than stuff. When I began living on just $1,000 a month in retirement, I expected the hardest part to be doing without things I once took for granted. I imagined missing dinners out, nice clothes, tech gadgets, and the convenience of shopping without much thought. But as the months passed, I realized that what I missed most wasn't material. It was connection. And slowly, I began to see with absolute clarity relationships matter more than stuff. When you're no longer wrapped up in work, career goals, and constant consumer distractions, life gets quiet. At first, that silence can feel empty. But in that quiet, you start noticing who's truly present in your life and who you've drifted away from. I started reaching out more. To old friends, neighbors, even family members I hadn't spoken to in a while. What I found in those conversations was far more comforting and valuable than anything money could buy. A shared laugh, a memory revisited, or even a heartfelt talk about life and aging was worth more than any luxury I once thought I needed. When you don't have a lot of money to offer, you learn to give in other ways. Your time, your attention, your energy. I began inviting people over for coffee instead of going out. I wrote letters, made phone calls, and showed up in ways I hadn't before. Relationships deepened because they were no longer built around doing things or spending money. They were built on simply being there for each other. There was no expectation, no performance, no pressure, just presence. And that was enough. I realized that the happiest moments in my days weren't tied to things. They came from real human connections. A chat on the front porch, a neighbor dropping off food, a walk with an old friend, even a spontaneous laugh and a shared memory. These were the things that made life feel full. Material possessions could never replicate that feeling of being truly seen, heard, and valued. There was a time when I thought giving a great gift or showing off a new purchase made me feel worthy or respected. But that kind of validation is shallow and short-lived. What lasts is love, kindness, and emotional support. When I had less to give in terms of things, I learned how much I had to give emotionally, and how much I still had to receive. Relationships also gave me something that stuff never could, a sense of purpose. I started helping where I could, whether that meant watching someone's pet, offering a listening ear, or volunteering time in my community. People began to rely on me, not because I had money or influence, but because I showed up. That kind of trust and connection filled me in ways no shopping spree ever did. The deeper truth I uncovered is that relationships are what carry us through the hard times. When money is tight and life feels uncertain, it's not the car in the driveway or the brand of your clothes that brings comfort. It's the people who check in on you. The ones who sit with you in your struggle, who remember your birthday, who make time just to talk. Those are the riches that matter most. I used to think having things meant I was secure. But real security comes from knowing you're not alone. Knowing someone cares. Knowing you belong. Relationships can't be bought, and they don't require wealth to thrive. They require presence, effort, and love. Living on less taught me that the best parts of life aren't for sale. And the more I nurtured my relationships, the richer my life became. The joy, comfort, and strength that come from human connection far outweigh anything material. In the end, when all else is stripped away, what stage brings? The laughter, the loyalty. That's what truly matters. Number 5, purpose doesn't retire. When I stepped into retirement, especially with just $1,000 a month to live on, I thought the biggest challenge would be financial. And yes, money was tight. But what surprised me was how quickly the question of purpose became even more important than the question of income. For so many years, my identity was tied to work, responsibilities, and being needed. Once that structure disappeared, I found myself waking up in the morning wondering what I was meant to do with my time, my energy, my life. That's when I learned one of the most powerful lessons of this chapter. Purpose doesn't retire. Retirement is often painted as an extended vacation, a time to finally relax and do nothing. But the truth is, doing nothing gets old fast. The mind and heart need more than rest. They need direction. They need meaning. I realized quickly that if I didn't find something to give myself to, I would begin to fade. Not physically, but emotionally and spiritually. Purpose isn't about staying busy. It's about feeling like your life still matters. At first, I wasn't sure where to begin. I didn't have a big budget or grand plans. But I did have time, experience, and a desire to contribute. So I started small. I volunteered a few hours a week at the local community center. I offered to tutor a neighbor's grandchild. I began mentoring younger folks who were just starting out in life. Each of these acts reminded me that I still had value, that I still had something to offer, that my presence made a difference. What struck me most was how fulfilling it felt to be useful again. Not in the sense of productivity or obligation, but in the sense of connection. Purpose, I learned, is deeply tied to how we connect others and with ourselves. It's in the giving, the sharing, the helping. It's in the moments where your existence lifts someone else's day. Even a little. Whether it's offering advice, sharing a story, planting a garden, or creating something with your hands, these acts become your new legacy. I also began pursuing passions I had once set aside. I took up writing again. I joined a local book club. I started spending more time outdoors, appreciating nature not just as a backdrop, but as a teacher. Purpose can be quiet and personal. It doesn't always have to serve the world in grand ways. It just needs to spark something inside you that says, this is worth waking up for. And as I leaned more into a purpose-driven life, I noticed that my days felt fuller, even without spending much money. I had a reason to get up in the morning. I had goals, even if they were small. I had people who counted on me, and moments that gave me a deep sense of contentment. The emptiness I feared in retirement was replaced with a new kind of richness. Not in things, but in meaning. What I know now is that retirement doesn't mark the end of usefulness. It's simply a shift. You may retire from your job, but you don't retire from life. You don't retire from being needed, from growing, from impacting others. As long as you're breathing, you have a role to play. Whether it's in your family, your community, or even in your own healing and self-discovery, purpose doesn't come with a paycheck. It comes with intention, with choice, with heart. And no matter your age or income, you have the power to live with purpose every single day. Retirement might close one door, but it opens many others. And in walking through them, you find that life still has so much to give, and even more for you to give in return. Retiring on $1,000 a month wasn't easy, but it was enlightening. It taught me that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in courage, connection, and contentment. I may not have much by society's standards, but I have what truly counts. The peace of mind, pride in my resilience, and the wisdom to know that I am enough. So if you're facing a future that seems uncertain, if you're staring at a bank balance and wondering how you'll make it, remember this. You are more powerful than your circumstances. You are more valuable than your net worth. And you are never too old, too broke, or too late to live a life filled with meaning. Let this be your reminder you can do more with less. You can rise above fear. And you can thrive, even on $1,000 a month. Retiring on $1,000 a month wasn't easy, but it was enlightening. It taught me that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in courage, connection, and contentment. I may not have much by society's standards, but I have what truly counts: peace of mind, pride in my resilience, and the wisdom to know that I am enough. So if you're facing a future that seems uncertain, if you're staring at a bank balance and wondering how you'll make it, Remember this, go. You are more powerful than your circumstances. You are more valuable than your net worth. And you are never too old, too broke, or too late to live a life filled with meaning. Let this be your reminder you can do more with less. You can rise above fear. And you can thrive, even on 1,000 a month. God bless you.